Honorable Shameen Thakur Rajbansi, Mr. Nirode Bramdaw, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Director Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Ms. Shisti Harinarayan, Mr. Piyush Khandewal, distinguished online guests. On behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, it gives me great pleasure to invite you to the second episode of Online Travelogue series, Bharat, Ek Anubhuti, India, a feeling. To begin with today's program, I would like to invite our first guest, a very well-known personality, Mr. Nirode Bramdaw, Honorary Consul of the Republic of Mauritius and Managing Director of the African Sun Media, to share his experiences of India. Mr. Nirode Bramdaw hails from a publishing background, his family having owned one of South Africa's first black entities in the sector. Bramdaw Publications published the country's longest-standing black medium, The Leader, for more than 60 years. He served the publication for more than 12 years in the capacity of a managing director. Also a writer, he has co-edited and has contributed to many journals, among which ranks the African Quarterly, published by the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and has written many regular columns for the Sunday Times and the Business Day, for which he has served a KZN bureau chief from 2000 to 2002. Since 2015, he was on the board of the 1860 Heritage Center, a South African museum which showcases the rich heritage of Indian South Africans. The 1860 Heritage Center documents, preserves, and records aspects of the South African Indian community as part of its collective natural heritage and identity. Mr. Bramdaw is the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Mauritius in KwaZulu-Natal since 2008. He is currently the Managing Director of African Sun Media, a book publishing company with a extended catalog including titles on racism, colonization, and history.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Cheryl G. And greetings to my co-panelists on this webinar. Many thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my Indian experiences with you and your wider online audience. My relationship with India really started in 1987 when I was just 20 years old. That was the first time I visited India, and I must say that as a young man, I was quite taken on the one hand and upset on another, because there were some practices that didn't bode well with me, like which has since been outlawed, by the way, the dancing bears that were common in the late 80s and early 90s. The government of India has since banned it. And then also the land of snake charmers. In those days, you could see snake charmers on virtually every street corner if you're a tourist going towards the Taj Mahal and so forth. But I've been fortunate to have visited India 16 times in that period, and I'm fortunate to have witnessed the change in Indian society and its landscape. But I must recall one of my early trips as a guest of your Ministry of Tourism, and in those days, Air India introduced flights into South Africa in 1994. So there was a lot on the go in terms of bilateral travel and bilateral exchange. I was then to go as a guest of Mahindra and Mahindra, the automakers, who were going to be launching their products into the South African market. I think one of the highlights of my relationship with India was to accompany President Nelson Mandela when he went in 1995 as the chief guest to the Indian Republic Day celebrations. I was part of the media contingent from South Africa that accompanied him and witnessed the events firsthand at Rashtrapati Bhavan in 1995. Interestingly, I was also introduced to the buildings of Rashtrapati Bhavan, which was designed by Sir Herbert Baker, who also designed the Union buildings in Pretoria. I was fortunate enough to have met two Indian Prime Ministers, Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Sri Inder Kumar Gujral. And also my spiritual leader, Swami Agnivesh, who sadly passed away last week, is also Delhi-based. So whenever I went to India, I used to pay him a courtesy visit at his home in Jantar Mantar, which is in central Delhi and often the spot of many protests. Then more recently, I've been to India with President Thabo Mbeki and Minister in the Presidency, Eso Pahad, and Minister Geraldine Fraser Moleketi. The Indian government's ICCR was also very kind to honor me with a visit as an eminent person under the Eminent Persons Program. I was then later to become a member of the India-South Africa CEOs Forum, which is co-chaired by India's Ratan Tata and South Africa's Patrice Motsepe. And I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Tata and traveling with Motsepe around India. But if I could just go back to a regional kind of take on my many visits to India, that maybe begins with Bombay, which is or was then Bombay, now Mumbai, which is probably the gateway to India as it's strategically located. So I was taken quite aback with all the different cultures, and I'm fascinated with different cultures. So I explored the Parsi religion and their practices for the first time in their enclave in Colaba. And also, for those who have read the book Shantaram, one must visit the restaurant Leopold's in Colaba as well. And then I remember going to Dalal Street, which is where the Indian Stock Exchange is located, the Bombay Stock Exchange. And at that time, in the late 80s, it was still a brand new building. And I remember taking an award-winning picture of a cow walking in front of this state-of-the-art new building. And by the way, Dalal Street means Traders Street, for those who understand Hindi. Taking my travels outside Bombay, I was fortunate to go to Pune. But on the way there, I was hosted with Motsepe at a brand new city, a metropole that was being built out of nothing called Ambi Valley, with its own electricity supply, water, hospitals, and it's a mixed-use development. I was surprised at the level of sophistication that came out of nothing on this new highway between Bombay and Pune. And then also, a little known fact is India developed its own supercomputers. And the people who developed, because the rest of the world were refusing to share their technology, Rajiv Gandhi, I think at the time, got his computer experts into a room and made them build a supercomputer. And that establishment that established India's first supercomputer is still alive and well and operates out of Pune. I then went on to Gujarat, which is the birthplace of my mother. And interestingly, there I was accompanied by the actor Anil Kapoor, who was doing a movie on Gandhi's stay in South Africa. And it was quite a thing being with Anil Kapoor in a car because all the kids on the side of the road were running alongside us. It was very funny and interesting. I also visited Anil at his flat in Mumbai and met with his wife, who's an interior decorator. I think everybody who goes to India has to do the Delhi Triangle with Jaipur, Agra, and Delhi. And I've done that a few times in my visits. And it was always something different and something new, and I've witnessed the changes over the years. I must add also that a large part of my visits to India is relationship driven. I was fortunate to be friends with the first Consul General of India, Ms. Lata Reddy, and her successor, Mr. Mysore Lokesh, whom I keep in touch with up until this day. And if I do go to India, I will definitely see them. I always make it a point. Also, what took me was the Mughal Empire when I went to the triangle of Agra, Jaipur, and the many forts of Fatehpur Sikri and Udaipur, and the level of sophistication that went into the architecture and the military might of the empire. Then, of course, in Jaipur, some of you have been there. The king at the time, Man Singh, had a a keen interest in astrology and this technical equipment that still exists in his palace, that in which he tracked the movement of the stars way before we had telescopes. So that was really something interesting. Then from there, I think the hill stations of Dehradun and Mussoorie also ring true for me. They're very quaint little towns, and it's got these winding roads to access, and it's an absolutely stunning drive and a stunning view to get up there. Also a Hindu, so I visited Haridwar and Rishikesh a few times, and I must add that in my first visit to take a dip in the Ganges, I was surprised walking down the Ghats on the pressure at which that water moves. And you have to hold on to a chain, even when it's at knee height, just to stay upright in that gush of water that comes down the Ganges. Following on from there, I must say that I went to the source of the Ganges, Gangotri, which was a lovely drive up into the mountains and something that will remain in my memory because of the terraced farming that they farm paddies of rice on the banks, and it's really picturesque. And I remember taking lots of photographs there. More recently, I went to Amritsar and visited the Golden Temple and got up at 4 in the morning when they take out their holy book, the Guru Granth Sahib. And I was there and I managed to touch the holy book that they parade around the temple every day. Not far from there is the Wagah border, the Indian border with Pakistan. And I was fortunate to witness the changing of the guards, which is quite a ceremony. And it's almost like a daily event for the locals to go and have a look at this and marvel at the military precision at which it's done. Going down south, firstly east, I went to Kolkata on that visit as an ICCR guest and addressed the Kolkata Journalist Society there, who were very intrigued with the change of nationalism in South Africa to democracy. And it was a very interesting exchange, and I made friends on that visit that I keep until today. Going down south, my visit to Chennai was very interesting as I got to visit the Kalakshetra School of Arts. And I was one of few people allowed in, and it takes a lot of organizing to get into those portals. But I was fortunate to be hosted. And then I was also hosted at the Theosophical Society in Chennai, which is their headquarters. And also one of the best looking universities, the best located universities in the world. Chennai University is virtually on the beachfront. And so I was fortunate to visit that. Moving on to Hyderabad, I was then with the minister in the presidency, S.O. Pahad. And for those of you who know, Hyderabad is renowned for its pearl industry. And so one morning we slipped out of meetings and went shopping. And we go to this pearl trader, and they take out all their strings of pearls and throw them on the counter, as Indian traders are wont to do. And Aesop remarked to him, "Have you ever heard of the saying, never cast your pearls before swines?" And we both had a good laugh. So I went to Bangalore for a wedding of a friend's daughter, and also went to Mysore, and I was taken. I had a meal at one of the palaces there, which is a hotel nowadays. And the climate in Mysore is very much like Durban. And being like that, it has lots of outdoor activity, which I saw people running and cycling and that kind of thing, which wasn't popular in my earlier visits. Rounding off my round trip to India, I think Goa would be a suitable place to end the story, where I stayed in one of the best hotels I've ever stayed in my life, the Leela Kempinski Hotel. And there I got acquainted with the strong Catholic traditions of Goa, and visited the Basilica of Bom Jesus and the remains of St. Francis Xavier, which is housed there in a glass sarcophagus. I think for many people going into India, one doesn't think of outdoor activity too much. It's more the cooking, the culture, the shopping and so forth. But I'm an avid hiker, and I was going to go back to India in March. I had made bookings to hike at the Annapurna at the Himalayan foothills. And I had bookings and I had to cancel them. So hopefully with these things, the regulations easing, early next year, I think the next window to visit Annapurna is in March and April. And I must say that also on my trip to Gangotri, I managed to do whitewater rafting in the rapids of the Ganges where it starts. So I think my impression is you can do whatever you want to in India. It caters for every kind of interest and like and need. So those are my few recollections of my 16 trips, and thank you once again for the opportunity to share them with you.
Thank you, Mr. Nirode Bramdaw, for sharing your wonderful experiences with us. We will now screen a very short video.
भगवती तव तीरे नीरमात्रशनोऽहम् भगवती तव तीरे नीरमात्रशनोऽहम् विगतविषयतृष्णा कृष्णमाराधयामि विगतविषयतृष्णा कृष्णमाराधयामि सकलकलुषभङ्गे स्वर्गसोपानसङ्गे सकलकलुषभङ्गे स्वर्गसोपानसङ्गे तरलतरतरङ्गे देवी गंगे प्रसीद 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 नमामि गंगे नमामि गंगे स्वर्ग की परछाइयाँ दिखती तेरे आंचल तले माँ तेरी हर बूंद में बहती हुई ममता मिले तू हथेली तन पे फेरे मन को भी निर्मल करे जिस तरह को तू छुए जीवन से उसको सींच दे लेके आया हर कोई बस पाप तुझको सौंपने फिर भी तू बहती चले सबको लगा करके गले स्वाद अमृत का तुझे ही चूम कर जाना प्रसीद 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 नमामि गंगे नमामि गंगे
Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that video. Our next guest speaker is a very well known and gracious personality who is also very well known in our community, Ms. Shameen Thakur Rajbansi, member of the Provincial Legislature, leader of Minority Front, to share her experience on India a Feeling. Ms. Shameen Thakur Rajbansi was born in 1964 in Durban. Ms. Shameen Rajbansi is the oldest of 6 daughters. She excelled at debating from the age of 12. She was also sensitized to her Indian indentured roots by her late grandfather, Mr. K. Thakur. He worked in the Burnside mines and became blind due to the fine dust from mining and the lack of protective workwear. Her grandfather did not see his grandchildren. This was very painful for Mrs. Rajbansi, who today is a very strong activist for workplace occupational health and safety. She was only 15 when she and her school friend were made to follow separate lines in Wimpy in Ladysmith. Furthermore, winter cold of the northern Natal to wait for fried chips. Only whites could sit in and eat. This racist discrimination embedded her in the mind and the need to fight for justice. Miss Rajbansi established Eastbury Pharmacy in Phoenix, whilst providing much-needed services to this community for more than 20 years. Miss Rajbansi joined Minority Front in 1998 and was elected the chairperson of the Women's League of the party. Thereafter, she was elected to the KZN Legislature for the 5 consecutive terms, 1999 to 2019, and has served on numerous portfolio committees such as Health, Education, Social Development, Conservation, and Public Participation and Petitions. In 2001, she has then after received many awards. She is currently the MPL of the KZN Legislature, leader of the Minority Front.
Thank you very much to the Consulate General of India, as well as to our Cultural Council, Dr. Yogi, for giving me this opportunity. And yeah, I was really touched by the topic, India a Feeling, Bharat Ek Anubhuti. For me, you know, whenever I think of India, it's always nostalgic. And so I separated it into my different feelings. And obviously, these feelings came at different phases in my life, at different ages, and how I could remember my connection to India every time and how it grew. Well, my first feeling was in the 1970s. And in the 1970s, this was obviously very anecdotal. It came from stories that, you know, I used to listen from my grandfather. He was from Lucknow, Raebareli, and you know, in the old days, as the eldest granddaughter, I would have to make roti for my grandfather. So while I was making this heaps of roti on a coal stove, and he'd be sitting there reminding me that the last dough had to be thick dough, and I had to really cook this roti very well. And while he kept me company making roti, he would be telling me about, you know, his childhood in India, and he'd always be mentioning Gandhiji and the struggle movement, and then speaking of Kashmir, which were very much his paternal side of the family, and the fact that they worked on and owned a sugarcane farm there. And then about his maternal side also, that his mother was from the Mysore district in Rajasthan. So I used to listen to all these, and that time I was between 12 and 14, so it was very exciting for me to listen about this, because I hadn't really seen any picture about India. I just listened to my grandfather, and he never got to go there, but obviously, in the picture, as you can see, whenever I go to Bharat, I always go to Prayagraj, I always go to the Triveni, and I always do Pittar Puja in honor of my grandfather and to always connect with him actually through this puja in Bharat and to say, you know, your granddaughter has made it here, and whenever I come here, I'm going to pay homage to you. And then, of course, once you land in India, you get attracted to so many other things. And I remember as a young lady, the first time I got to go to India it was when I could afford to go to India. Because in 1983, my late dad, he had planned a trip with my mom and myself when I matriculated, and he really wanted to take me to India, and but we never got there because that trip was planned for December, and in April of 1983, my dad tragically passed away, and so I never got to go there because he really wanted, as a son, to go and trace my grandfather's and our family roots. And so that opportunity was a missed opportunity. But I soldiered on after his death and qualified as a pharmacist. And thereafter, my first opportunity I got to go to Bharat was a shopping opportunity. And it was exciting. At that time, my sister was getting married, and I was going to do wedding shopping. So I went with another sister of mine, and I remember we also had some leisure time, and we went to Goa. So it was just, one of those experiences that we wanted to have, just to do go on a buying spree, as it were. But of course, a very important thing I remember when I landed at the Mumbai airport was that when I got down, the first thing that I did was I bowed down and I touched the ground of my Matrabhumi. And I kissed the ground and I prayed because it was such an emotional feeling. It was like, you know, when you're born and the doctor cuts the umbilical cord and you're a little baby, you don't know it. But eternally, you have this attachment to your mother, this connection. And same it was with my Matrabhumi, because with India, although I was not born there, but through the attachment of my grandfather, that umbilical cord, it's there, it's eternal. It's like Bharat is always calling you if you're an Indian, and whether you're in the diaspora, it's like a magnet that attracts you. So then, of course, as I matured and started my political work, I got many opportunities to visit Bharat. I visited on many occasions in portfolio committees, and one of my most memorable trips was with the Education Portfolio Committee, where we brought back many ideas like the nutrition program, which today we have in South Africa, and it was what I saw in a school in Bengaluru at that time. And it was a fascinating way in which food was freshly cooked and given served to learners, and that's how that policy got adopted in South Africa. Then, of course, when I was studying for my MBA, I remember the government of India, the IIT Delhi, ran a competition where the top students around the world in the master's program were selected from different countries to debate on economics and all kinds of commercial subjects in the MBA degree. And from South Africa, I was one of those fortunate students to be selected, and I did come in the final round of the debates. Then the other was, of course, when and I must thank the Consular Corps in South Africa and the government of India, because they then started the Parvasi Divas, and on many occasions we went. On one occasion, Mr. Rajbansi got the Son of Bihar Award, and we also learned something quite surprising, that there's a town in Bihar that is called Rajbansi Nagar, and it's in Patna. But of course, we never got to going there. But really, it made Mr. Rajbansi so happy getting that recognition as a son of Bihar. I remember that. So that was really a special moment. Thereafter, once I became the leader of our party, I must say that India was one of the first countries that invited me through the Global Friendship Society to deliver many talks on women empowerment and about women in politics. And with this organization too, I got many international awards. So I feel that all these engagements were, I really was appreciated as a daughter of India and as a daughter of Bharat Mata. So I want to say thank you once again. And thereafter, and maybe recently, as my son has, started also taking a liking to going to India. Well, I've been on many a pilgrimage. In fact, I've taken a very conscious decision for the last few years, I think from 2014, that every visit, a personal visit to India will be one of only. And I've done this because as I explored India, I realized that, it was the only place in this whole planet that would allow me to develop my personal spiritual evolution. Because I had taken, I would say, a vow that I must visit the 12 Jyotirlinga. And I'm really happy to say that to date, I visited 8 Jyotirlinga, and I've only got 4 more to visit. And every time I go, it just enriches my soul, and it feeds my soul, and it energizes me so much to accomplish so many things and multitask so much. So really, it's something that I would motivate so many other travelers to do, because once they find their real purpose in life, I can promise you that Bharat Mata fulfills a variety of purposes that an individual has. It's a calling for us. But on my last occasion, which was 2019, I went to Dwarkadesh. And this is the second time I've been there, because my son is very attracted to Dwarkadesh. And he has told me last year that when he gets married, he's going to get married there, because this mandir is it's full of the pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. It's dedicated to his family. There's a mandir for his wife Rukmani. There's it is a flagship for the love that our Lord portrays. And I think that what the Indian government should do, actually their tourism sector, they should promote Dwarkadesh and so many other mandirs that portray love from our Vedas. They should portray, they should promote them as maybe places, I would say, for destination weddings. So I think that they've got a lot of potential there, and it has to be looked at. But of course, a special moment for me was when I visited the Taj Mahal with Mr. Rajbansi, and this was a period when I think that the tourism sector generally always promoted the Taj Mahal as a monument of love. And obviously, millions of people have been there. So it was no different for me. But I still believe that after visiting so many other areas, there are so many iconic options that people have today, and these should be looked at and explored. The next thing, of course, is the cuisine. I think that when you travel from South Africa to any part of the world, one of the things that we generally are not very happy with, because, you know, in South Africa, we know our cuisine, and I mean, we love our food. We have a different take on Indian cuisine, but when you get to other places globally, you find that that can be quite maybe not the best parts of your trip. But when you get to Bharat, whether you were, you know, non-vegetarian, but I can tell you that you will really change your mind about becoming vegetarian, because I've seen many family members manage an entire trip being vegetarian because the variety is so great, you see. And the important thing about the meals, whether you're having a street meal or whether you're fine dining, I can tell you one thing about Indian cuisine. I studied it very well. It's always very well curated, it's nutritionally balanced, and it's a delicious spread of food. And so, for the tongue, I can tell you there's no control when you go to Bharat. But if I had to make some suggestions, because of my travels and my experience, and because of the feelings that every trip has evoked, I think that some of the things are the transport modes, because whenever I go there, I always interact with the different travel agents, and I say to them, you know, try to promote. You've got beautiful waterways, you've got a well-rounded coast, there's easier ways to get from one place to the other. Look at coastal tours. Do invest more in cruise ships, you know, and so that people can move from one place to the other than just being limited to flights. And of course, now with COVID-19, I think that they should take these suggestions very seriously. And of course, trains would be the other way to go. But I know that they are investing in these. Um, and all the other things that I'm talking about, whether it's pilgrimage sites, whether it's yoga, whether it's the universities in Bharat or the medical tours, all these speak to people from different age groups and different wants and needs. And I think that destination weddings is definitely a way to go. And finally, I want to say that, you know, overall, when I look at Bharat, to me, this subject of a feeling, it actually equates to excitement in my soul, because I can tell you every time I save up monies and I get to Bharat, I go there with a lot of you know, enthusiasm. I go there looking forward to my trip, irrespective of whatever hardship that travelers sometimes face. But I overlook all those, because to me, that experience is most important. And I think, therefore, when you look at the Hindi translation of Ek Anubhuti, you know, for me, it translates to Atman Utsaha, because this is what it does to me. It excites me. It excites me intrinsically. It speaks to every you know, stretch of my imagination of what I can do and what I can accomplish in the time that I spend in Bharat. So for me, every trip is a calling for some new adventure in Bharat, and therefore I would always promote Bharat and trips to Bharat, and actually encourage everybody who's listening that at any time in your life, if you really want to have a special trip, a trip to remember, please go to Bharat. And with these words, I want to say Bahad Bahad Dhanyabad, CPG, Yogi ji, and thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity. Bharat Mata Ki Jai.
Thank you very much to the Honorable Shameen and taking time off busy schedule to join us today. Now that we have come to the end of today's program, I would like to invite Ms. Shisti Harinarayan for the vote of thanks.
Namaskar. On behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, it gives me great pleasure in rendering this afternoon's vote of thanks for Bharat Ek Anubhuti, India a Feeling. Today is our second series of this new program, a travelogue indeed. We would definitely like to express deep gratitude to Miss Shameen Thakur Rajbansi, Mr. Nirode Bramdaw, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, colleague Ms. Cheryl Banwarilal, Mr. Piyush Khandelwal. Thank you so much, Piyushji, for all your technical assistance and support in making this online program a huge success. Most importantly, we would like to express deep gratitude to you, our online viewers. Thank you so much for your support and continuation in watching all our programs. Definitely stay tuned to our social media pages for what's happening next. Namaskar.